Mims Davies.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and congratulations to all honourable members making their maiden speeches, and the honourable gentleman for Livingston. May I wish him well in his time in this place. May I at the outset agree with my right honourable friend from Malden, the absolute lack of mention in the budget and the preamble, the very long preamble yesterday, to mention COVID and the war on our continent was very stark. However, I would like to start on a positive note. As the 380th woman elected to Parliament, it was truly a historic moment to see the first female Chancellor at the box. And she mentioned about it giving hope to other women who are watching, and I absolutely agree with that. I just hope that our businesses and sectors like hospitalities and others do feel that hope. But it was very pleasing, Madam Deputy Speaker, to hear the announcement of the compensation schemes for infected blood. And may I mention Robert in my constituency in East Grinstead in particular, who's been campaigning very hard on that, and also for the post office scandal, which will be welcomed by many of my constituents. And there was pleasing news. Fuel duty was frozen, and I thank all my honourable friends and those campaigning who made sure that area of family finances were supported by that not going up. So pleasing on that, and indeed the cladding interventions. Welcome boost to send, and of course something for the dreaded potholes. How far that will stretch, we've yet to find out. However, with 10 independent schools in peril in my constituency, Madam Deputy Speaker, the food providers, the staff, many people very worried about where they will go if they are displaced, and there is no funding in this budget for those displacements. I would have welcomed more support for the Sussex wine sector, and I'm sure Madam Deputy Speaker would agree with me on that. And indeed, if the train drivers' needs...
For the background, this isn't about consumption of wine, but as I have many vineyards, just as the honourable member has.
Very important people working in the wine sector. Viticulture is alive and well in Sussex and indeed Essex across the country. But if the train drivers' needs have truly been satisfied, then the services from East Grinstead to the capital simply must improve, and that is my plea to them and to the southern services. Now, on to the subject of the budget. Despite the leaks and the pre-budget announcements, it came something of a shock to hear the announcements fully in the round of the budget yesterday. There could be no mistake, the cost to the country is very dear. In total, £52 billion in direct and indirect costs, according to the OBR. The new Labour government cannot simply escape in its very first budget after the 14 years, they keep reminding us, that they are set to raise taxes by a staggering £40 billion, the highest since 1993, and building on the disgrace, frankly, of the winter fuel payment debacle. Despite their glee and order paper waving, when they go back to their constituencies, open their emails, they will see a very different story. Their constituents, like mine, will see the largest tax burden in our history, and it is working people that now the Chancellor has agreed will pay the price. Let me turn to younger voters, those keen to get on the housing ladder. Stamp duty is back for first-time buyers. And indeed, 2 rental properties this morning, which were due to be purchased, have fallen through. This has been highlighted by one of my Conservative councillors in Copthorne and Worth, because the margins were already very tight, and yesterday's decisions means that 2 couples are now not going to be homeowners. In Handcross and Pease Cottage, one of my councillors, Mr Prescott, mentioned the budget of broken promises. It will cost his organisation £70,000, losing 2 people and stopping the delivery of programmes. This is the reality of the decisions made. And small businesses, often women-led, such as salons, will see the impact of the rise of national insurance. So I'll be very interested to see what the effect is across all of the sectors, and particularly as this was a clear breach of their commitment in their manifesto, despite what retrospective revisionism the party opposite may claim. It will be felt right across the land. And listening to every radio station on my way in this morning, the dismay across sectors, across real people's lives, was everywhere. Affecting, of course, the national insurance rise are hospices, are air ambulances, charities and organisations. And as the Shadow Chancellor spoke this morning on the media airwaves and again today, picking the pockets of business, indeed of charities and organisations, is not cost-free. And as the IFS have confirmed, it will hit the lowest paid workers through lower pay, and the OBR have said it will hit employment. So much for not raising taxes on working people. 2 manifesto commitments have been broken. Go ahead.
Constituency of Earlham Woodley told me that their #1 priority on the doorsteps was to improve the NHS. If the honourable member's opposite's party was still in government, they would be overseeing steep cuts across the NHS and across our public services. Ask the honourable member opposite if she would be happy to be part of such a programme.
I think nobody here wants any kind of negatives for their constituencies in the budget, least of all when it comes to health services. But I've got family in Wales who've been living under a Labour government, and they know the reality of what is coming down the line. Let me build on some of the questions that I had from constituents this morning and some that I mentioned in the chamber. Family businesses are being affected directly. Local funeral directors group with a national reach say that they believe that the Treasury have got their figures wrong when it comes to the impact of the changes of agricultural property relief and BPR. The cap and the 20% must surely be a simple mistake, they write. To meet the inheritance tax bill, firms will have to extract capital to pay the liability, incurring 38% dividends tax above the proposed 20% of reduced IHT. When compared to capital gains tax at 24%, it makes no sense for family businesses to pass on their shares to family, but simply they will have to sell them all their businesses, and they have implored that I ask the Treasury bench, please can you, as the government, consult and listen to family businesses at the very, very least. Now, in the opening, the Minister talked about us opposing the budget. We are opposing the budget. It is anti-choice, anti-growth, anti-business, particularly family business, anti-aspirational. It's focused on more borrowing. It's disgracefully pitting, to the Honourable Lady's point earlier, the public sector versus the private sector. Happy Halloween, everybody, because everybody here knows this is the ghost of a Labour government of the past, and they are back and haunting every single constituency. Now, representing a rural constituency, it is clear that my local farmers will be hit by the changes in inheritance tax. Just read the messages from the NFU today. I'm afraid the subterfuge and hoodwinking of the farming community will be felt, not just on these benches, but all across everybody's community. Now, I recently read out in Westminster Hall what it means to a local farmer who wrote to me on concerns at that point purely on business confidence. And the same farmer wrote again this week. And farmers, I will remind the House, are working people 365 days a year, 52 weeks a year. He said, my family's farm and estate are currently economically viable, but there is no chance that they would ever produce sufficient cash flow to make it possible for us to cover any significant amounts of inheritance tax. If we are stuck by excessive taxation, we will no longer be able to produce 7 million litres of milk per annum, or indeed timber for the nation. A heritage of 200 years could be gone. Farmers across my constituency are stunned, and I know Madam Deputy Speaker wants me to conclude. This is a hammer blow for family businesses, as the Shadow Chancellor said today, and we will be opposing this budget. It is not fixing the foundations, it's a set of dangerous groundworks.